This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, and we take a look at the political pieces we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 30th of July 2020, and I am DM.
I'm JM.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, political disaster, how Uhuru Raila cash law fell apart. In the Standard, Stormy House defeat stuns Uhuru Raila. And in the Star, we have PS Macharia, where are Corona billions?
Wow.
Let us begin with the Standard. There was a Stormy House defeat, apparently.
What was the storm about?
So apparently there was a moment of truth, and basically the Standard is telling us that BBI's future may be at stake after rebel senators savored their first victory against top leadership. Top leadership in this case being Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga.
Yeah.
And they say with time running out on Uhuru and MPs getting bolder,
Yeah.
a period of political uncertainty is following. So they also, the article outlines sort of the failure being in large part to the top leadership based on Orengo's statements
Yeah.
at Senate this week, saying that leadership was inaccessible, and that is what had led to the impasse. But they also point to the majority leader, Samuel Pogisio, and the majority whip, Kangata, as sort of failing at their first hurdle.
Yeah.
This was baptism by fire, and there was a stalemate.
Yeah.
So what can we say? We have Raila's vague statement. We have Uhuru, who we assume supported the formula.
Yes.
But we also have a lot of DP's allies going against what we thought would, we thought that they would vote a certain way, and they went the complete other way. So what do we say about...
Yeah, so absolutely. That gave me a glitch, by the way, the way in which they voted. Yeah. Particularly DP's side, because we know how they've towed the line all through. Yes. They have not publicly gone in opposing directions. Yes. But then we see Murkomen at the floor of the Senate being very fiery about the position that he's taking, which we assume is the position of the deputy president, and we also assume is the position of all the other senators in the House that are aligned to that faction. Exactly. But then when it comes to voting, we see that Murkomen stands alone, the chief stands alone, and the rest of the Tanga senators, as we would call them, voted yes. Yeah. So I think it's all about, GK, you had mentioned this, it's about ambition. Yeah. You are going for a second term. Yes. You know what would look good on the ground. You don't want to give your opponent fodder and say that this is the guy who was trying to take money away from you. From your constituent. Exactly. Yeah.
So those with political ambitions were very careful about how they voted for the CRA formula. Yeah. They wanted to protect any kind of ambition that they may have in 2022. Yeah. There are others who said they stood in solidarity with their neighbors because of ethnic proximity. And here they outline Kisii, Nyamira, Kakamega, and Vihiga. So there's a lot of solidarity there. Yeah. Can we move to the Daily Nation, which also is speaking to the same thing? Yeah, it's saying it's a political disaster.
Absolutely. But the story therein does not match the headline. Okay. Because I think the Daily Nation perhaps had a better reading of the political intention than the Standard did, because what they have done is outlined the things that suggest that there was suboptimal action at the Senate. One you have mentioned, GK, is that Pogisio, the leader of the majority in Senate, was absent at that time. The leader of the party chose to send him out of the country to represent him at that particular time. And their reading of this is that if this was important for him, then he would have retained him in Parliament, in Senate rather, to whip the senators in the direction. And then of course there was also the parliamentary group meeting that was supposed to happen with the president, and it didn't happen. And the purpose was also to once again whip the senators in the direction. Then of course James Orengo did tell us that the president was inaccessible, meaning that he did not prioritize this voting issue.
So you're saying Uhuru wanted it to go this way. The idea was it was to flop.
This is what the Daily Nation is telling us today. And this is what we also talked about yesterday, that there was suboptimal action. That the defeat was actually intentional. And the hypothesis, as 2M put forward yesterday, is that we are creating a raging debate that will coalesce central Kenya together. And while it's doing that, it coalesces other communities against Central Kenya, because the one man, one vote, one shilling thing reeks of entitlement. And so
this is a whole, you're telling me it's a whole elaborate attempt to woo Gema back. And is the party leader that intentional and that strategic?
That is what 2M and myself are telling you.
Let me give my contrary opinion. That this actually is a sort of tactical victory for the deputy president. This is how the country is reading it. After all the whipping and the de-whipping that's been done in the last few weeks, the party leader was expected to carry this one.
Yeah, to have a win.
To have a win. And what leads me to that conclusion is because it was this I think amendment by Kenyatta was defeated very narrowly, or the one that was finally adopted came in also quite narrowly, which means that if because it was very close, it means it could have really gone either way.
Either way.
But then again, as you said, well, let me put it differently. Victory in politics is never total. So yes, the DP and his boys have carried the day on this one, but this is one amongst many battles to be fought between now and 2022. And the fact that he sent away his, the majority leader away to Tanzania, basically means that he didn't want it that bad.
Or was he intentionally losing the battle in order to win the war?
Win the war, perhaps. Take a loss on this one. Interesting. So let's see whether DP will capitalize on this, especially to do with BBI debates that are upcoming. We have a 3-part criteria that we're going to use to break down the headlines. We'll ask ourselves if it's topical or speculative, if it's repetitive or groundbreaking, and if it's thoughtful or just plain lazy. We can do the star and then come and see who carries the day.
So the star, very short one. PS Macharia, where are the corona billions? And the star tells us that Kenya's Foreign Affairs PS, Macharia Kamau, contracted COVID-19 last week, and since then he has questioned the country's competence in managing the pandemic, and he's been wondering where the billions have gone. He's said to have been lamenting on a WhatsApp group of top government officials, which was seen by the Star, that the government's contact tracing methodology has collapsed, that there is no access to proper care, and even more tragic is that there is no medical insurance cover for the virus. And he says that after he tested positive, he quickly informed his contacts about his condition, but to his surprise, none of them have been contacted by the government on their whereabouts, and so they continue to spread COVID-19 to date.
Wow.
So,
well, hopefully once they were told, they've taken their own precautions at the very least. But who's the snitch? Who is this showing the Star WhatsApp messages? This is the danger
with WhatsApp groups,
Or maybe the Star is in the group as a...
Who knows, by the way.
Maybe. But he seems sort of disenfranchised or very angry for him to be calling out his government in such a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so who do we give it to, guys?
I think the Standard is groundbreaking. It's topical.
I'm not enthused by any of them.
And thoughtful.
I like the Standard as well. There you have it. Standard gives us our winning headline. The Stormy House defeat Sans Uhuru and Raila. On to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy? Can we begin with the Standard, please?
The Standard. In the Standard, Gado has a very sad tableau there. There's people standing around representing the DPP, the DCI, and IPOA, and the police force, and they're all surrounding 2 officers who are beating up a lady who we know is the MCA Mutheu, and they're doing nothing about it. They're just standing around. In fact, the IPOA seems to be smiling, or is that the IG? So it just portrays the ongoing problems of police brutality.
Yeah, as people are just spectating.
Yeah, and especially the lack of action against it, against the officers participating.
Yeah, and I don't think it's enough to just condemn. Can we actually do something about it.
I think this is I think this is a really good opportunity for the IG Mutiambai to send a very strong message against police brutality and using excessive force on citizens or leaders or any Kenyan. This is a good opportunity that he shouldn't squander, and he should use it to bring those police officers who participated to book.
But let me ask, guys, and this is very controversial. What if Kenyans like to be beaten? What if they actually are addicted to this struggle of being
Pastor Jem, is that you?
Brutalized by the police.
I'm also wondering.
It's still part of the. Let me tell you, it goes back to the mental conditioning and the mental slavery that I was talking about the other day. And when you have a police force and a population that has been conditioned in a certain way, and not even Mudeo, let's even talk about the people in the lower socio-economic landscape of our country.
So we're getting the police we deserve.
It's really been normalized. I think that's what I'm saying. It's been normalized to an extent where they expect it, and maybe they are even addicted to it. And this is why they behave so.
This is the extent to which you're right.
They taunt the police.
We have inherited a colonial practice of physical subjugation and of violence, and that one has been institutionalized. So we experience it from institutions that are supposed to protect us. They have never moved from being a force to being a service. And you're right, because that is something that was inherited colonially.
And the beating begins in school. Day one at school.
I hear you all.
This is such a slippery topic.
I know. Can we move to the Daily Nation, where we have
in the Daily Nation. Sorry, I'm dazed.
No, it's fine. We have a caricature of Uhuru Kenyatta. And we have a caricature of Raila Odinga. And they look to be sort of putting together a combination to a safe. And all the combinations say yes, 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 yes. And the head of the body of the safe is the Senate. And the Senate is saying no. And I think this is just giving commentary to the events this week, that as much as they were trying to orchestrate a yes, and they thought that the deed was done and the deal was signed and finished, Senate was saying a resounding
no. I like this cartoon, although from the opinion that I have given, I don't I think it is factual.
Yes.
But the visual representation is hilarious, and you can see how thin Raila's hand is and how thin Uhuru's hand is compared to the Senate that has been drawn as a strong man.
Exactly. And quickly, if we can do the star.
Yes. So today's cartoon is of a bottle representing bars and restaurants which are on a very short leash, and coming out of the neck of the bottle is indeed a short leash whose end is a noose. And it depicts a situation bars and restaurants are currently facing as COVID measures put tight restrictions on their operations. Our restaurants are now not allowed to serve alcohol since Monday, putting a lot of them into further straits financially. A lot of them have declared that they're going to close down.
I mean, the biggest margin people make is on alcohol. So if they can't sell it, I mean, many won't be able to make ends meet. Who do we give our winning cartoon, guys? Is it the safe? Is it the police brutality? Is it the...
I'm inclined, you know what? I'm inclined towards the police brutality because I think it's a really important
subject. There continue. We are. Can we give the Standard our winning headline? There we go. And now for our final thought. But before we get there, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes, so now our final thought, which is inspired by a TED Talk by Sir Ken Robinson called Do Schools Kill Creativity?, which he delivered in February of 2006. Now, Ken Robinson is a British speaker, expert on education, and an international advisor on education and the arts. So his talk is about education and creativity, and he begins by telling us, we are educating children to prepare for a future which we ourselves, as those who educate them, know nothing about. So he's talking about the unpredictability of the future. So he says that children who are starting school this year, that is 2006, the year he delivered the talk, will be retiring in the year 2065. Now, the way the world is changing so rapidly, we have no idea how the world is going to look like in the next 5 years, let alone how it's going to look like in 2050 or 2065. But we are preparing these children for that future. And he says, and I really love this part, he says, all kids have tremendous talent and we squander that talent ruthlessly. He says creativity is an important part in education, or creativity should be as important a part in education as literacy itself is. He says we should treat it with the same status, and he'll tell us why. So he says that the thing about children is that they are innately creative. So creativity is inbuilt in them. And this is because they are not afraid of being wrong. Yeah. So children are creative because they keep doing things. They're not afraid of being wrong. So eventually they do something that is original. And he says, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you will never come up with anything original. Yet another powerful quote. So he gives stories, he gives different stories about, or examples about kids who are not afraid and demonstrated creativity. And I liked one story in particular. He said a little girl, we'll call her Gadoni, was in a class, a drawing class, drawing, and the teacher noticed that she's been quiet for so long, which was not very usual of Gadoni. So she goes and says, what are you drawing? And she says, I'm drawing God. And the teacher says, but nobody knows how God looks like. And Gadoni says, they will know in a minute. When I'm done, I will show them. Yeah. So this story demonstrates children's capacity to be imaginative, to be bold, to be creative, and most of all, to demonstrate that they have no inhibitions, to be unafraid. But he says, unfortunately, by the time children get to be adults, most of them would have lost that capacity, if not all of them. They become afraid of being wrong. And that's just how our world is constructed right now. That is how companies are run. They're run on the premise that it is the worst thing that you could do or you could make is a mistake. And also, even more unfortunately, that is how our education systems around the world are centered upon. The worst thing that a child could make is a mistake. Yet it should be the best thing because it demonstrates that they have made an attempt. And I agree wholeheartedly with this. Except of course for medical school and flying school. Should not be wrong. No mistakes. No mistakes.
Absolutely. This is, I think, one of the most popular, the most remarkable TED Talks ever given. And the reason partly this is because of sticking to the 18-minute rule, which I'll talk about shortly, as well as being creative. And there's a nexus there. The shorter the time you're required to do a presentation, the more creative you will become. And this is what Carmen Gallo says. And that's why he advocates for the 18 to 20-minute rule. And to back that up, the author cites the example of President John F. Kennedy's inaugural speech. So Kennedy's inaugural speech, believe it or not, was only 15 minutes long. And in those 15 minutes, he successfully inspired the nation. And if he could do so, there's no reason why you can't also condense your presentation to 15 minutes. And so Kennedy, we're told, had instructed his speechwriter, Ted Sorensen, to keep it brief because he didn't want people to think that he was a windbag. And the result was one of the shortest and most memorable inaugural speeches up to that point in history. 1,355 words against an average of about 2,300 words. Lastly, the author quotes another author who talks about brevity, a guy called Matthew May, in the book The Laws of Subtraction. And May submits this point also very persuasively by saying, by establishing a boundary or limit to your presentation, you provide a focus and a framework for creativity to flourish. And there are many studies which have offered evidence that contrary to the popular belief, the main event of the imagination of creativity does not require unrestrained freedom. Rather, it relies on limits and obstacles. So the more limits and obstacles you present upon yourself, the more creative you will become.
Fantastic. I really loved this TED Talk. I laughed from the very first time he got onto stage, which I think is one of the brilliant things he does. And Gallo, in his book, Talk Like TED, tells us the secret is to lighten up. Don't take yourself or your topic too seriously. And because he humanizes himself, Sir Ken Robinson sort of lures us into his life. So in a matter of minutes, you know where he has lived, where he has moved to, how the dynamic between his wife and his children, and all in a really humorous way. And it really worked so well. But the interesting thing here, and the caution that Gallo tells us, is that jokes are not for everybody, right? A joke poorly told, or worse, a well-delivered joke but that is tactless, can diminish your reputation. But Sir Ken Robinson does it sort of really well.
Yeah.
But he says that humor involves risks. Now this is Gallo from the book, and he tells us you have to sort of take courage, be vulnerable, but be authentic. So if you've laughed at this joke before with your friends, it's likely that an audience may also laugh that same joke, but you just have to be careful. The other secret, which Gallo tells us, that makes Robinson's TED Talk so good is that he has a conversation. You almost feel as if you're talking to your neighbor and not this, really smart guy. And I think that also takes practice. You have to practice, internalize your content so that when you get up on stage, you're able to just deliver it as if you're having a cup of tea. The other thing he does is the 3 principle rule. He tells us 3 things really cleverly. He tells us intelligence is diverse, it's dynamic, and it's distinct. So people have their own way of doing things, and he takes each aspect and gives you a story. So when he tells us that each person has a distinct intelligence, he gives a story of a girl who sort of could never sit still in school. She was always not doing very well in class, and so the teachers tell her, the teachers approach the parents and say she has a learning problem. Ken Robinson tells us that in today's time, that would have been ADHD. The child is unable to sit still. So they do an experiment. The teacher leaves the child in the hall, and music is playing, and the child starts to dance when they leave the room. And so the teacher says, maybe you should try taking her to dance school. Eventually, this lady had improved on her dancing skills, went to dance school, and she became very famous and made a lot of money, even millions. Do we know who this person is?
I can't remember her name, but I know she's Andrew Lloyd Webber's wife.
Yeah, but she ended up, just by virtue of one teacher recognizing that her talent was actually in dance, opened up her whole future. So it was really, really intriguing TED Talk for me. So on a day where we had a winning headline from The Standard and a winning cartoon from The Standard, I want to repeat what DM told us and what Ken Robinson has said. Mistakes should not be stigmatized, but rather be seen as a part of the learning process. If you're not prepared to be wrong, you will never come up with something original. So fail and fail fast and get up and do other things. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Time Free to Air, and Star Times. Have a lovely week.